Greetings, everyone. Honorable ministers, excellencies, Dr. Addis King, esteemed partners, my dear United Nations colleagues, and dear young people, dear friends, younger and older. I first thank the government and the people of the Commonwealth of Dominica for the signature warm welcome and hospitality that has been offered to me and my team since our arrival. And I have to note that with 3 ministers in attendance, it is highly encouraging to see that this intergenerational dialogue is being prioritized at a time when, yes, the world is in great need of a new generation of thinking, which takes wisdom from the young as well as wisdom from those who are older. I'm also inspired to be back in this beautiful country where I have so many fond memories, having served in the wards of the then Princess Margaret Hospital personally, and as a young pediatrician traversing this country, seeing the natural beauty, but also the beauty of the people and the culture, and the deep understanding that heritage is not something for the past. It is definitely something that we build upon for the future. I will say that my attitude in my public health career was launched here in Dominica, where I had senior contemporaries, but also juniors, such as dear Carissa Etienne of blessed memory, and our intergenerational interaction was also a model of how you learn from people who are younger as well as those who are older. So very pleased to be here. I'm also doubly pleased because right now, Dominica is best in class in so many instances. And among this is the commitment of climate resilience as a watchword in the Commonwealth that the region is paying attention to. And as we move to Antigua this weekend for the Small Island Developing States Conference on Climate with a top issue, Dominica will take its place there. And I have to add that as the mother of Mandela Gregoire, a filmmaker following in the tradition of his grandfather, whose roots are in Grand Bay, I really am very, very happy indeed to be back in this country after probably, 25, 30 years. I believe that the sense of connection that binds us together is part of the charge that we were given when our moderators, Fael and Miss Delia, spoke just now. Indeed, as we think of setting up the parameters for this discussion, the question I have is, will we share a common commitment? Will we share a common collective commitment that puts equitable, sustainable development as our charge and our challenge? Here for the future of Dominica, for the Caribbean, for the Pacific Island states, the African states, and others who are part of that vision of the future when the Secretary General of the United Nations convenes us in September at the Summit of the Future. Will the issues that we discuss today find their way into that pact, including the digital compact? Because in a digital environment with artificial intelligence, tuning into what young people are saying is going to be essential. It was, in fact, 30 years ago, and Minister McIntyre last year actually led us with insights as to what makes sense for population and development. 30 years since the Cairo International Conference on Population and Development, which stated put women and girls at the center of development because that will uplift the family and everyone rises together. We indeed, I think, as we fast forward now to 2024, 30 years later, find it relevant to continue that discussion as to how does reproductive health and sexuality shape a future? We're right here in the Caribbean. We have some countries where fertility is still high, yet we have others that are worried because of shrinking populations, low fertility, and the prospect of the hollowing out of the working population ages. So, sexual and reproductive health, fertility, what it is that women and couples decide to do, all of this is going to continue to be relevant. And it's heartening to see that there are efforts here in Dominica to protect and promote some of these core principles that relate to human rights. And File, you've already mentioned how important it is for the duty bearer, but also for every individual to understand their own human rights. Many of you know I'm a big advocate for adolescent girls. I was impressed in our discussions with the Prime Minister to understand that Dominica is one of those countries that has stopped penalizing girls who become pregnant in adolescence, typically through ignorance. I would not call it innocence, I would call it ignorance. And then if she's doubly punished by being yanked out of school, which happens all too often when we look around the broader international neighborhood, this is a recipe for intergenerational poverty. So I believe that these principles of putting women and girls at the center, of being truthful with young people about what they can expect as they navigate adolescence, will lead to gender equality for all genders, men, women, for everyone, and in fact to the empowerment of society. I was happy to know that Dominica, of course, is first in class in the Build Back Equal program. And when that was launched last year, the United Nations did pledge to put women and young people front and center. And these initiatives, hopefully, with these new adolescent health standards, will be an official signal working with the Ministry of Health that healthcare providers should be trained, well trained, to meet the needs of Dominica's young people, to equip them with information and services that they will need to safeguard their health and well-being. So I add my voice of congratulations. Investment in young people. Investing in young people is crucial for sustainable development and for a climate resilient Dominica and world. To have the right tools and knowledge, to know that you're supported by your parents, by your community, by your ministers, this is something that is going to encourage young people to make the right decisions and the right choices for them. And hopefully, part of those choices and decisions will include an avowal to live free from violence and from harmful practices. Peace is on the lips of everyone, especially today when we're looking at headlines from the Middle East, when we're looking at what is happening in Sudan. The Caribbean should have that pride of knowing that while there may be hiccups, this has been a region of peace for so long, and may it continue, because peace in the home, in the community, in one's heart, all of this makes a difference in terms of cooperating and making progress sustainable. Yesterday in the Kalinago community, with a young chief, we had the opportunity to see how innovative and concrete solutions are being brought to bear in rural communities of this country. We noted that the young people understand what's happening in their communities and that their leadership is important in the quest for rights and choices, for bodily autonomy, for gender equality, and also for that climate resilient future. At the same time, this is a country that has contributed far more than its share, I would say, in terms of elders with all their life experience, leading regional bodies, imparting wisdom locally as well at the community level. As we have lived through turbulent times, as hurricanes have shaken the foundations of the physical buildings of the country, it hasn't shaken that resolve to share the vast knowledge and experience and to be a source of strength as we move forward. One of my favorite proverbs comes from Yoruba, and I quoted it indirectly earlier. It states, "With the wisdom of the youth, with the wisdom of the elders." That is how Ife was built. And in translation, the youth come first. Then we turn to the elders. And Ife is the holy city, the seat of Yoruba culture. With the wisdom of the youth, with the wisdom of the elders. That is how Ife was built. So I think as we listen to both sides of this intergenerational dialogue, I will be tuning in to see what is it that UNFPA needs to do in terms of our next step. What is the advice that we're going to hear from the different perspectives? Here we are in a country with this beautiful motto, "Après bon Dieu, c'est la terre." I mean, come on. That tells you that we have a future ahead of us if we work together, where rights are prioritized, where sexual and reproductive health will be a source of enjoyment and not embarrassment at the right time, at the right choice. Young people with the information and services that they need to be safe, to make decisions where every young person's potential can be fulfilled. This is a bright promise, and I really hope that our conversation today will embody that listening spirit of partnership which Cairo ICPD represented. I will close by letting you know that in our meeting with the Prime Minister, he was indeed full of praise and rightfully proud of the accomplishments of this nation. He spoke of the power of partnerships to go forward with a positive attitude, looking at the assets rather than the deficits. And this is something that we will certainly bear in mind. He also said, and Betty and I were quite pleased to now have a new quote that I will be giving credit for, but quoting as I go forward, "Share what little you have, not from the abundance you have." Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be with you.